Good morning, 7th graders. Mr. Anderson here with another poem that I wrote today at Carver Park. The last poem that I read to you was a ballad poem, and I told you you could do either a ballad or a lyric poem. So I wanted to give you an example of a lyric poem that was a reflection on nature, just like the other one was a reflection on nature. In this photo I took here at Carver Park, I was just getting into the heart of the woods, and it was as if all of these trees were newly blooming with this bright green color. I couldn't get over the color of the green. It was so vivid, and it would just embrace you all around you. These trees were everywhere. Um, and they kept in the breeze they would kind of shimmer, so there would be different shades of green, and that was the main impression that I had while walking through the woods today. So I wanted to do a poem that would be about the greenness the greenness of that whole walk through the park. And I also was thinking about the Romantic poets and how they viewed nature as something that was meaningful and something that was beautiful, and it was alive. It wasn't just us thinking that it was beautiful and kind of imposing that on nature, but actually what the Romantics believed was that nature itself was beautiful and it was meaningful. And it had some sort of significance, meaning it pointed to someone, some creator that also was beautiful. And so that I wanted to do that with my words as a type of worship. I call this Ode to Spring. An ode just means it's a poem about a subject. So it's a poem in praise of something. An ode to all that's green and bright. Break forth from wintry weary night. Take up the song of springtime skies, the whistling breeze that kindles light. Fix your eye on verdant hues, the leaves and grass beneath your shoes, Edenic home of first delight, where lilies long to be made new. Water now that slouching soul with living streams brought near to drink. Taste abundant life in him, and deeper in his currents sink. Speak into the listening world the words she first taught you to sing, and linger on along the wood, cathedral of a radiant king. Okay, that is my lyric poem about my walk through Carver Park. And maybe you'll see on my screen that Jonah just messaged me. I guess Jonah makes the video today. Um, so that's what I have to share with you. A couple things that I could draw attention to in how I came about that. Of course, there was a lot of just sitting down. It didn't come immediately. I sat down right after my walk, right in the park, and then it started to rain, so I had to go into my car, and then I just wrestled with the poem for a good 2, 3 hours. So it was. These aren't just quick things. You can do them in a couple sittings. You can sit down and just knock it out. Um, but you're going to have to take a lot of focus, regardless of how many times you sit down. Um, you have to think through it, and sometimes you just have to stir, like kind of what's the word? Kind of let it stew. If that metaphor works for you. If you can't quite think of the line, what was going to rhyme with it, if you're in a rhyme scheme and the word just isn't coming to you, sometimes you just have to let it simmer in your mind for a while. Um, a few more details about this poem. Let's see. I had taken little bits of other poems, like phrases that I thought were inspiring. There's a Christmas song, actually, called Break Forth Ye Beauteous Heavenly Light. And I think that's one of the best lines that's ever been composed. So I took those couple words, break forth, from winter weary night. That end of that phrase was my own. But definitely think about the poems that have inspired you the most and take a word. Now, of course, we don't plagiarize. If we take a whole line, then we're plagiarizing. And if we take more than a line, especially. So it's great to have influences, to think about the people, the poets and the songwriters that you enjoy. Those are your influences. Just don't take all of their stuff. Take a word or a style, even better. Let's see here. I used a lot of alliteration, just like I did in the last one, because I think alliteration makes poems a lot more fun to read. There is a rhyme scheme here as well. Let's see. In the beginning, it's A, B, A, and then it just gets closer to what we had in the last one, A, B, C, B. Um, so it's pretty irregular. That stays the same most of the time. I do an iambic tetrameter for most of this poem as well. And in the first few words of each stanza, I have a command. So I'm commanding the audience to do something. Break forth. I am commanding the woods basically to break forth into life. I am commanding the person walking in the woods or the audience, fix your eye on verdant hues. You should do that. Water now that slouching soul. I'm telling you, if your soul has been slouching, interpret that however you would like, then it's time to water that and nourish that soul and bring it back to life. And then finally, I have the command speak. Speak into the listening world. This is the romantic idea that the world is a living thing that God created. It's not dead, but it's very meaningful because God has brought it into life. So I'm telling you to speak to the world, the words she first taught you to sing, and linger on along the wood, cathedral of a radiant king. What does radiant mean? That's a great word that we don't use enough. Well, the sun radiates heat, right? It's as if it's giving off these rays. Um, and so I want to say that about God. I want us to know that God radiates his goodness into the world. It flows from him. It's cast out of him to us. It's projected onto us. And then I wanted you to see these woods and nature itself as a cathedral. And what are cathedrals and churches really supposed to be? Well, they're a place where humans can meet with God. So I felt that I was in the presence of God when I was walking through these woods, and so I called the woods a cathedral. They are the creation of God, and they are built for us to enjoy him in. So that's how I kind of turned my walk in the woods into an ode to spring, a lyric poem, a type of hymn as well, a piece of worship. And so maybe if you don't like doing the ballad route, you would rather do the lyric route just like this. And I'm sure many of you have already started that work. I'm going to keep it nice and short again today. Thanks for checking in. We'll talk to you next time. Just wanted to add one more thing before I let you go. It's Thursday when you're watching this, which means we have our meeting coming up. I would like you to bring your show and tell object if you haven't done that yet. And because I really want to see everybody share something. You could also show and tell a few lines from your poem if you'd like to, because I think that would be sweet to hear you read it in your own voice. So if you're working on that poem and you got like a stanza or two down, then bring it to the meeting so you can read it to all your friends. All right. See you then.